to this week's edition of the American Scottish Foundation, Scots in Us. This week, we're going to catch up with Charles Lord Bruce, who is heading up a wonderful project for the Standing Council of Scottish Chiefs, the Heirs Project. And as he introduces us to the project, he will then hand over to two young heirs, one who's just taken up the helm, Alasdair Morrison for Clan Morrison, and another in waiting, Angus Kincaid. And so let us now join Charles Lord Bruce.
I wish you all a very good afternoon from where I'm sitting in Scotland. And I hope that your gathering in Alexandria this weekend will be a thoroughly enjoyable and memorable experience. I trust the community conference will provide you with the necessary inspiration and encouragement to face the future with confidence. And along with many people in Scotland who follow these conferences with great interest, I congratulate you for persevering with this annual forum, for correctly identifying the relevance of the topics under discussion, and for seeking a collective consciousness among the participants for the issues that really matter and affect us all. In addressing the topic, how our history and community empowers our future, it seems very appropriate that the conference is being held in Alexandria, a maritime settlement founded by a group of Scottish merchants in 1749, within 4 years of the last Jacobite rebellion, and named after the Alexander family, farmers from Scotland, who had first acquired the land in 1669 for 6,000 pounds of tobacco. The influx of Scots to Virginia gathered momentum in the second half of the 17th century for a variety of reasons. Describing the first 3 generations of Scots migrants, Roderick Gordon, a ship's surgeon who settled in King and Queen County, wrote in 1730, "Pity it is that thousands of my country people should be starving at home when they may live here in peace and plenty, as a great many who have been transported for a punishment have found pleasure, profit, and ease, and would rather undergo any hardship than be forced back to their own country." But perhaps the most compelling reason for Scotland and Virginia to be so closely linked in the early 18th century, following the Act of Union, was trade. One of the earliest atlases in our library at Broom Hall in Fife, in the room just behind me where I'm sitting, is a finely printed general topography of North America and the West Indies, published by Thomas Jeffreys in 1768, which places Virginia squarely in the center of the eastern seaboard, dominating the export of tobacco from the ports of embarkation on Chesapeake Bay, the principal commodity of the Atlantic trade. This trade hugely benefited Scotland in the second half of the 18th century, with annual imports from Virginia increasing from just under £1.5 million in weight in 1707 to reach £47 million in 1771. And within 4 years, Scottish merchants were supplying over half of all European markets with processed tobacco products, equivalent to 80% of all exports from Scotland by value. In 1776, the year after the American Revolution started, Adam Smith, professor of philosophy at the University of Glasgow, published the first comprehensive treatise on economics, the Inquiry into the Cause of the Wealth of Nations, and became one of the first writers publicly to comment on the scale and economic impact of the Atlantic trade on Scotland, observing that the discovery of America and that of a passage to the East Indies by the Cape of Good Hope are the two greatest and most important events recorded in the history of mankind. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that Smith and many of his contemporaries, such as the philosopher David Hume, considered the revolution to be not only avoidable, but also a highly regrettable event, principally because it threatened to sunder a relationship that had served Scotland so well, and also to impose an invidious and wholly artificial test of loyalty on all Scots, regardless of where they were domiciled, between the Crown and their conscience. Writing to William Strahan, the publisher, in 1775 on the outbreak of the Revolution, Hume advised, "Let us lay aside all anger, shake hands, and part friends. Or if we retain any anger, let it be only against ourselves for our past folly." Adam Smith also struck an optimistic note in The Wealth of Nations for the continuation of friendly relations, suggesting that by thus parting good friends, the natural affection of the colonies to the mother country, which perhaps our late dissensions have well might extinguish, would quickly revive. And expressing similar sentiments, but from a Republican perspective, in a letter written in 1820 to the Liverpool abolitionist William Roscoe, Thomas Jefferson spoke of his regret for the circumstances that have nourished between our kindred countries angry dispositions, which both ought long since to have vanished. I believe it is possible to conclude, therefore, that from the very beginning of your country's journey to become a nation state, our greatest thinkers could only wish for the resumption of the close connections born of kinship network and a shared intellect that had emerged in the century before the revolution. This relationship continued deep into the 19th century, and I find myself writing this introduction to the conference almost 160 years to the day that Abraham Lincoln gave his address at Gettysburg on the 19th of November, 1863. Lincoln's affinity with the work of Robert Burns illuminated his soul in a way that no other writer or poet touched him. After his death in 1865, the old Colton Cemetery in Edinburgh was the first location outside the United States where a monument was raised in his honor. And I suggest that this extraordinary feature of the relationship between Scotland and the United States lies at the very heart of our reciprocating responsibility as chiefs and clan and family representatives. And it's for this reason that COSCA and the Standing Council of Scottish Chiefs have each set up small committees to work with each other on matters of mutual interest and concern. The COSCA group is chaired by Charlie Sherwood, president of Clan Scott Society, while the Standing Council team consists of Sir Malcolm MacGregor, who has succeeded the late Donald MacLaren, both as convener and in this specific role, Viscount Dunrossel and myself. An important issue in this regard has become known as the Heirs Project. This can mean different things to different people, but in essence, it is about our collective responsibility to be good stewards of our heritage and to ensure that there are a good hand ready to receive it when we pass it on. This is a challenge for any organization, and the Standing Council is no different. We've taken our responsibility to our heirs very seriously. We prepared a short booklet, which has been distributed to our heirs and successors and lays out what they should expect and what a good chief should be expected to do. We've arranged events where the booklet has been distributed and these expectations have been discussed. And the heirs themselves have responded by forming a WhatsApp group to serve as a support structure, a mutual resource for each heir where common challenges can be raised and addressed. So what are these expectations, you may ask? Relations with clan societies in North America and elsewhere are laid out as critical responsibilities, and this is as it should be. Being a chief is not just a title, it's a job, an office. And the relationship between chief and clan or family has a high degree of mutual obligation. An earl or a viscount arguably is responsible only to himself or herself and their ancestors. But a chief is a chief of something, a clan or extended family. And if you're going to accept the role of leader, you have to be prepared to lead. Being a chief is about relationships. It's important to demonstrate the necessary care and concern for clan or family. There are different ways to do this. Write an occasional column for the Clan Society newsletter. Be prepared to receive visitors to your home. Discuss your shared history. Make occasional visits to attend games and other events overseas. But above all, be a good listener. You shouldn't expect to be the CEO of your clan society, more a kind of non-executive chairman. But even in that capacity, it's important that you're seen to understand the issues and that you're known to care. Where there is goodwill on both sides of a relationship, everyone is happy. Any issues can be addressed by encouraging and cultivating good communication skills. Most society folk in the United States are fiercely proud and protective of their chiefs. And to say this is a critically important area is not to say it's currently a problem or that such relationships are necessarily dysfunctional. The principal goal of the Heirs Project is to help chiefs, heirs, and societies to plan wisely and to do what they can to make sure these relationships are as good as they can be in the years ahead. In July, as a member of the Royal Company of Archers, the King's Bodyguard in Scotland, I was involved in the National Service of Dedication and Thanksgiving at St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh. The recently crowned King and Queen, accompanied by the Prince and Princess of Wales, attended and were presented with the honours of Scotland, the ancient regalia of crown, sword and sceptre, giving her address from the pulpit where John Knox delivered his sermon 450 years ago. The moderator of the Church of Scotland spoke of a collective responsibility to our communities and to our planet. She said, "We are one global neighborhood, intricately interrelated, completely codependent, woven together like a tartan." And she concluded as if defining the strapline of the Heirs Project. We are a saga, not a short story, a symphony, not a solo. Well, it's my huge pleasure to introduce Alasdair Morrison, Chief of Clan Morrison, who succeeded to the position when he was just 17, after his father, Dr. Morrison, died unexpectedly from a brain tumor in his early 50s. Fortunately, Dr. Morrison had filed the appropriate paperwork and Alasdair had been well prepared. He'd been taken to Highland Games in this country since he was a young boy and had even sat in on Clan Society meetings. This is something every chief and heir can be doing together now, making an effort to introduce the heir in person to the clan and letting the heir see for themselves what and who are involved. None of us knows when our time will be up, but that's why this kind of preparation is so critical. Alasdair is now beginning his second year at University of Glasgow and has very nobly agreed to provide the conference with his perspective on the role that he has inherited. And when he has finished speaking, we will be joined for a panel discussion on the issues that have been raised by Angus Kincaid, heir to Madam Arabella Kincaid, Chief of Clan Kincaid.
And now we're going to be joined by Alasdair Morrison, who recently inherited the role of Clan Chief of the Morrisons. He is still at university, attending Glasgow University, and we're very honoured that you're going to be with us now, Alasdair, to speak to us on the Heirs Project, which you're helping to lead forward on, we hear from Lord Bruce. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Camilla. And yes, I'm honored to be a part of all this. The Heirs Project is a very important step and something that I wish was a little more in place when I became an heir and started with, and I hope to be able to help facilitate that over my tenure as chief. Personally, I am the fourth modern chief of Clan Morrison. My clan was without a chief until the late 60s when my great-grandfather, Dr. John Morrison, became the first modern chief of Clan Morrison. I became chief in 2020 after my father, Rue Morrison, passed away from brain cancer at the age of 52. I was 16 years old, and it was a lot of responsibility to take on at that age, especially after just losing my dad. But my family had been preparing me for it throughout my life. My parents brought me to the Outer Hebrides in summers and to Highland Games in the States from when I was 4 months old. So I've gotten to see firsthand how my father, as both an heir and a chief, interacted with clans, societies, and enthusiastic Scots worldwide. This gave me an idea of what my responsibilities as chief would be and what I can do to live up to that title. I also had a brilliant support structure in place for me through my cousin, Andrew Morrison, the Viscount Dunrussell, whose vast knowledge on heraldry and the clans has already taught me so much, and I look forward to learning more from him, and the Clan Morrison Society of North America, who have stood by me and helped me take my first steps as chief. In watching my father and learning of my grandfather's actions as chief, I saw examples of how to support the clan society and participate in the standing council as a chief. My grandfather, Dr. Ian Morrison, was very involved with the clan, going to games and gatherings throughout his time as chief worldwide. He participated in and helped organize the construction and installation of a footbridge to the ancestral Morrison stronghold on the Butt of Lewis called Donation. This bridge is the first bridge ever to allow public access to the Dun. Previous generations, including my father, had to scale down the sea-swept cliffs of Lewis, swim across a small channel, and then climb back up the stack on the other side to get to the Dun. This project involved a lot of fundraising from Morrisons abroad and in Scotland, is in my opinion the type of positive impact a chief and heirs and everyone involved at the higher levels of a clan can have in Scotland. My father and grandfather also participated in the 2008 clan gathering in Edinburgh. While my father was not chief for long, only 10 years, he was present at many Highland Games in the States and participated in the annual meeting of the Standing Council of Scottish Chiefs when his schedule permitted. I continue to try and attend these meetings and engage with my clan while I'm also balancing my studies at the University of Glasgow, where I'm a second year studying computing science. I personally made my first public appearance as chief at Grandfather Mountain Highland Games in North Carolina in the June of 2021, when I was just starting my gap year after graduating high school. I was invited to open the games by the president of the games, Steve Quillen, and I gave a short speech there. This was new and a slightly scary experience for me as a 17-year-old, but I had a lot of support during these games from other Morrisons and relaxed over my weekend there as I had fun meeting people and even getting to play a little fiddle for some people at a party after the games concluded. I was grateful afterwards for the people around me who helped me through my first games as chief. After Grandfather Mountain, I went with my cousin Andrew Morrison to Stone Mountain Highland Games in October of 2021 in Georgia. I had a wonderful time at these games and got to meet Chief Urquhart. I had a bit of fun at these games and even getting up to some good-natured antics around the clan tents with other members of my clan. Since my gap year over 2021 to 2022, I haven't been able to go to Highland Games in the States as I've been living and studying in Glasgow, though I look forward to being able to attend more in my future once I am not in full-time study. In my experience of going to Highland Games within the States and Scotland, I've seen a difference in public participation in each country. Games in both countries celebrate traditional athletic events, Highland dancing, and music. However, public participation differs. In the States, Highland Games are an opportunity for visitors who trace their ancestry back to Scotland to learn more about their family, clan history, and connect with other members of the clan through the clan villages that are set up at each Games. Many people in the States attend the Games wearing their family tartan as kilts, t-shirts, or scarves, but in general, the public does not participate in the athletic events in the States, but cheers on the competitors with great enthusiasm. In my experience going to Highland Games in the Outer Hebrides, we don't focus on clans as much there, more on the athletics. The only people wearing tartan are the pipers and the Highland dancers. It's more focused on good-natured community rivalries. For example, my family is from Clachan-Sange, which is halfway between two of the larger towns in the islands, who have a large rivalry, and we end up getting pulled from one side to another, depending on what athletic events we decide to compete in. My sister even won the single lap race when she was 8 or 9 years old one summer. Participating in these games has helped me see a difference in the roles of clans in Scotland and abroad. If I could give some advice to heirs and successors, it is to go out to games and meet your clan and see how your chief interacts with them. This is possibly the thing that best prepared me to assume my role. To push and preserve your heritage and make it accessible for those who want to learn about clan history. Though the most important advice I ever got was that being a chief is an honor that you generally did not earn, but a responsibility you have been gifted. Every chief approaches this role differently, but we are all here to serve and represent our clans. And as part of my role in that, I intend to work with the heirs and and other chiefs in the Heirs Project to help develop a support system for new heirs coming in and passing on some of the things I've learned in assuming this role and understanding the difficulties in not only having just lost someone important to you when you assume the role as chief, but also now having all these extra responsibilities that you didn't have beforehand and the eyes of your clan on you. I look forward to working with some of the other heirs I've connected with and the chiefs in the future, and I hope to be able to speak again with you. Thank you.
Well, we are delighted to know that this project, the Heirs Project, is really gaining momentum. And over here, speaking as a member of the Scottish Coalition USA, which is very involved in Tartan Day around the United States, and also as part of the organizing committee of the Tartan Day Parade, New York, we are very aware that we would love to be connecting more with the heirs that are here in the United States as well, and have them play a greater role, which would help, I hope, in preparing them for the next step and stage. And it goes without saying that we do hope, Alasdair, that you will join us in New York sometime soon, 1 April, and be leading the Morrisons, because they are one of over 30 clans, I think we're getting towards 40 at this time, that take part in the Tartan Day Parade. And we even get your cousin Andrew Morrison to march with us. He's been a wonderful, Viscount Dunrussell has been a wonderful, enthusiastic support to the parade.
Yes, I look forward to being able to come and participate in New York in the near future. Hopefully I'll be able to find some time within the next 5 years that I can get there. I've personally always participated in Tartan Day since I was probably about 6 when I got my first kilt. I would always wear my kilt to school. My dad always encouraged me to wear everything, be Scottish with pride.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're here to help, all of us, and SNACC thanks you, and we look forward to speaking with you further on this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so now I'm delighted to be joined by Angus Kincaid, who's the heir to Clan Kincaid. So Angus, good morning, and thank you for joining us at the Scottish North American Community Conference and our first panel today.
Good morning or good afternoon, as I would say over here.
So we're looking, we've just heard from Charles Lord Bruce, who is spearheading the Standing Council project of the Heirs Project. And he has explained to us how you are one of those that are helping to lead the charge of helping other young heirs as they come along. Your mother at the moment is the head of the Clan Kincaid, which again is an unusual thing. Not all titles passing through the female line. So let's turn this over to you. And if you could tell us a little bit about how you're being prepared, how your mother was prepared, and how you feel this whole project is important.
Well, thanks very much, Camilla. It's an absolute pleasure to be here talking with you guys today. As you briefly alluded to, Mum is the current chief, which is not regular, though it's never been an issue in Scottish history having female chiefs. The Clan Kincaid has had two female chiefs for the most recent heads of the family. And so after a few generations, I'm hoping to show that a chap can do it as well. But I think Mum inherited quite young as well, relatively young. When going to the homecoming in 2009, I remember seeing most of the clan tents all with generally quite an elderly chief, and then Mum was there in stark contrast from that. There was a funny article which was published in the Scotsman saying, listing all the female clan chiefs, and the most glamorous of whom was Arabella Kincaid of Kincaid. So Mum definitely didn't look to me like the stereotypical or classical Scottish chief. I think for me, I remember Mum and Dad sitting me down at home, aged about 8 or 9, and explaining the chief thing to me and saying, you're the oldest child, so it's going to be coming to you next. Do you want it? And I instinctively, I think, as a people pleaser, and as someone who was interested in it, just definitely said yes. I was always interested, but what does it actually mean? I think younger generations these days are all not engaged in their past as their parents have been. I think that happens across all cultures, everywhere. And I remember being a young boy, being told to go to a wedding or a church service or something, aged about 5 or 6, being told to wear my tartan trews, and I was so desperate to not wear them that I chose, I think, every single other pair of trousers in my wardrobe to try and not wear them. Anyway, I was simply told to go back upstairs enough times until I came back down with the shoes on. But I think everyone's priorities change over time. Everyone has highest priorities, and those do morph as you grow older, be that kind of work or school or dancing or singing or university or sport or ancestry. And as a young boy, I used to find things that my parents found interesting really quite boring as well. I didn't want to go out and have long lunches and go and pore over family trees and look at old dusty books. I didn't want to, but now some of those, talking to Kincaids and talking to fellow Scots and Scots around the world is some of my favorite things to do. So I think to young children and to young adults, adult stuff, if I can use that, it is boring. But I think when children are in those teenage years or early, like late teenage years, early teenage years, and kind of definitely early 20s, there's a space for kind of sociable inclusion of them into your interests, kind of your interests as a parent or as a grandparent, I think. I've spoken to two Kincaid clansmen about this, both in very different circumstances. One one of which was when I was in Australia, I was on the phone to another Kincaid who was mentioning that he wanted his son to be a bit more interested in it. And I remember him talking to me about that. And I remember meeting another Kincaid at Grandfather Mountain Highland Games when I was there in 2019, who also brought along his son to say, look, this is what it can be like. This is the Scottish ancestry. This is what your history was. So I think I know and I hope when I grow up and have children that my children will also follow the same interests as me, but how to do it. I think that's kind of where the Heirs Project fits in, is this slow social level of inclusion of children, young adults into family tradition, into history, and be able to leave them wanting slightly more rather than shoving it all down their throats as yours as a parent or grandparent's interest.
I think the really big thing that we're very enthused by over here in the United States or around the world is the energy that the Standing Council is giving to being more engaged with us, more directly engaged, and being over here, because it's wonderful when you do come over and we can see you, not just for your clan, but for the community. It means so much. And when you get involved in a project, and I think that is now the leadership within the Standing Council is very much aware of that now. And so I just want to say thank you to you for what you do. Because I'm involved with the Tartan Day Parade in particular, up in New York, and a Tartan Day around the United States. And having you involved and the clans gathering now in New York for the parade, we had over 35 last year, is fabulous. I know it's not 120 or 140 like they have down at Grandfather, but it's just a reason for everybody to get together.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think those celebrations, all celebrations of Scottish culture, that's the reason why we do it. That's the reason why, if there wasn't any interest in Scottish clans, then there'd be no point in having a standing council. So, I absolutely love my role within it, although I'm not a chief yet, and I hope not to be for a long time, because I quite like my mother being alive. But
well, like Charles, I mean, he's fabulously, Lord Bruce is fabulously engaged with the whole community, and he's another in waiting. And I mean, I think that's the thing. We hope that you, as heir apparents, will get more involved over here, because definitely. Why shouldn't you be?
Definitely, I completely agree. And I think Clan Kincaid has been super supportive of that in the past, and I look forward to meeting more of the Kincaids over there and over here in the future. Definitely.
So if there's anything we can do to help, I know that COSCA are also one of the leading advocates of this program. So we're going to hear from John Belisai shortly as well on some remarks. But I think that it's just know that we're all in the diaspora is grateful to you, and it's wonderful when you're here.
Well, we see you as family, and we absolutely love spending time with you. And likewise, if anyone wants to get in touch, I think you'll have my contact details or an email address or something on the program. So,
are you traveling to? Is your mother or you traveling this year?
I haven't. There's been talk about it. I need to get on the phone to Mum about that at some point. There has been a bit of talk. So hopefully that's not just talk. Hopefully we'll get a chance to come over the pond.
Well, keep us updated. And thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, always.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week, and a thank you to our guests, Charles Lord Bruce, Alasdair Morrison, and Angus Kincaid. Every 2 weeks on a Monday, we release a new episode of The Scots in Us. With over 100 episodes now in our library, please visit your favorite podcast platform, be it Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, or iCloud. We are on all of them. So until next time, and to learn more of what we're doing, Visit us at our website, americanscottishfoundation.org. Thank you.